Welcome everyone to the next edition of the Care CEO Success Stories podcast. My name is Adam James of Spring Up PR, and today I am delighted to say that I have Bhavna Keane-Rao. She is MD of BKR Consultancy, and they support care facilities to improve their services and work with regulators. Now, those of us in the sector will probably know of Bhavna already, and today, I'm delighted she's going to be sharing her expertise, and she is speaking from her car. She's very brave. Well done, Bhavna. We'll get to that in a moment. But Bhavna is going to be talking and sharing her expertise. Now, listen to this. On how to go from requires improvement to outstanding. This is not theoretical. This is not hypothetical. This is real life, real case scenarios. Bhavna's going to talk about how to do that and how she has done it with care providers, and a particular focus on the care provider today. So it's going to be a great episode. As I say, make sure you take note, tell others. And also, if you go and have a look at all our previous episodes featuring some of the biggest names in the care sector who are leading care providers in particular, make sure you go and have a listen. And also, if you like this episode, please give it a shout, give it a like, tell colleagues about it. You might be watching on YouTube, however it is. Do us a favor and share it, and then we can spread the word. So before I introduce Bhavna a little bit more, as I say, my name is Adam James of Spring Up PR. What we do is we help care providers get the fame and recognition they deserve via PR and marketing, ultimately to help them get more inquiries, particularly from self-funding families, to increase their beds fast, fill their beds faster, and also to recruit dream care teams by being seen as an employer of choice. If you head over to springup-pr.com, you'll find a whole numbers of case studies, videos, webinars on exactly those topics and areas that we help care providers. So without any further ado, and to coin a cliche, as they say, without any further ado, let's get straight into the episode. And Bhavna, I'm delighted to have you on. Why don't you start off by telling everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Adam. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to have a chat with you about this. So my name is Bhavna Keane-Rao. I am the managing director and one of the founding members of BKR Care Consultancy. My background is CQC for 23 odd years, and then 13 years as a care consultant in the sector, working with various providers, so from secure units, hospitals, care homes, children's homes, to secure units. So, and anything in between that falls under the remit of regulators, both Ofsted and CQC, working throughout the UK.
Great. Now, let's get into it. So imagine a care provider requires improvement. They don't know what to do. Something's not gone right. What do they do?
Right. I think the first bit is that when they get to the stage of requires improvement, there should be some indicators in their governance system to pick it up. But most people seem to either not recognize those, or their governance system is flawed, or they've got so used to working in the same environment that you don't know what you don't know. And then the regulator comes in and says, actually, you've got it really wrong. And so you're going to require improvement. At that stage, we probably get providers coming to us, clients. So it could be the banks, it could be the lawyers, it could be the owners who said, actually, CQC have really got it wrong. Let's challenge them. So there are things that can happen. So you challenge CQC through factual accuracies. On some occasions, we've had success on that front. So it goes from, at the draft version, from requires improvement to a good, because we've challenged it. We understand the concept. So that's the first way. Second bit is involved, and we support the providers to make the various improvements that you require. So that could be, we go in and pull together an action plan based on the visit by the regulator. So the regulator has said, you've got these things wrong. You haven't, as an owner operator, you've not challenged it. So you're saying, actually, this is right. So then we produce an action plan to see how we're going to work with them. So that could vary, and it depends on number of Chloes as well. As you know, is it safe? Which part of it is it the requirements falling under?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you get there, so you went, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to ask you, the phrase you use about you don't know what you don't know. Talk a little bit more about that. What kind of scenarios are you coming across
Right.
where people like don't know what they don't know?
Well, the thing is, the regulator sometimes doesn't know what it's doing. So
Right.
that's the starting point.
Yeah.
So you've got somebody coming in and saying, you've done this wrong, this wrong, but they don't tell you how to fix it. In the same way, we are in people business. So if you've been working to a certain system, you're not going to try and on purpose get things wrong. But things have changed. The methodology that CQC use has changed. And so you may fall foul of that, where you're doing something and you think it's the right way of doing it, but you haven't pinned it down with, say, a risk assessment, or there are other issues on the medication side, but you've got on and done what you think is the right thing, and you've continued doing it, thereby you've exacerbated the whole situation. CQC comes in and says you've got it wrong. You didn't realize it was wrong, so you don't know until somebody highlights it. At that point, you know, but you're not skilled up enough to unpick it and put it right.
Yeah.
So that's where we
I'm curious here. So, they don't know, or why would that be? I'm just thinking, let's not harsh, but let's say, you're a care provider, you've got a lot of responsibility. Should you not be making sure that you do know everything that will not mean that you drop to it requires improvement? Because we know it's damaging for everyone's reputation and all the rest of it. I'm just curious about that. It's almost like the preliminaries to running a home.
Well, exactly, and you'd think that people would be, but if you look at the sector, we have actually the training has gone somewhat in addressing. People have lots of training, do lots of personal development situations. You have mentoring. All of those things are there, but when you're running around working through, got 50 people in your care home, you're responsible for that. You're responsible for the manager's role, they're responsible for budgets, so on and so forth. Sometimes your training is the one thing that falls off, and you're supposed to keep up to breast with it.
Understood.
But not everyone. And I think that's where the issues happen. And I don't think people are waking up in the morning wanting to be poor providers, poor managers, you drift into that.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I see. And if a provider feels, that report's not right, CQC's got it wrong, what point do they say, right, I should get legal advice, for example?
Right. So if you are adamant that, CQC, I always say the minute CQC are on your side and you think they are being unfair, you will get a feel for it.
Yeah.
At that point, do an email. If you're a manager, do an email. So it's date stamped. It's a live email. You don't know the outcome of your visit, but you feel that it's not going, and the inspectors come in and said, what, this care home, you call it luxury, I wouldn't put my dog in it. We've had comments like that.
Yeah.
So it's going wrong. So at that stage, immediately do an email and say to your owner, this is what. So it's date stamped. You don't know the outcome, but you're really concerned about the tone of the inspectors. So that's the first thing you can do. So you've got, and always say to your staff, do an email. As soon as you've spoken to the inspector, whatever you feel, it might be fantastic discussion, capture it and say, that was a real positive experience to speaking to the inspector. They really valued what I had to say, or they were really derogatory, were looking down at me. All of those things are really important because you don't know the outcome of the visit. So what you're getting is the raw first-hand information before it goes any further. Now, that carries a lot of weight. CQC will not look at anything during a period, once the inspection's done and until the draft report is produced, because they reckon that people complain because the inspection didn't go the way they planned. Well, this is before the outcome of the visit. This is date stamped before the inspectors have left the site. And that's powerful evidence if you're going to challenge. And if you're adamant that, CQC didn't give you a fair crack of the whip and didn't give you the time of day and were biased against you, then at that stage, you either do factual accuracies challenge or, and at that stage, it may be after that, but you involve lawyers where they come in and they actually say, actually, this is wrong. But once CQC decide on publishing that report, then CQC, it's very difficult to get them to back down.
I see.
And that's where you critical review has to happen where providers with the money and the clout can actually push that one.
So you have to
But
be
it's
quite
very
fast. You have to be a
Yeah.
fast responder as well.
Absolutely. And there are timescales. You've got 28 days from this day
Yeah.
and 10 days. All those timescales are really critical. And the other thing, if you in your factual accuracies don't say that you are also challenging the rating, then CQC won't let you challenge the rating once the factual accuracy process is done. So it's really bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. And are there things that you shouldn't do if you feel, it's inaccurate, the rating's not right? Are there other things that you shouldn't do to
Well,
respond?
the thing that we know some providers have rang up CQCs and had a rant at them. That
Yeah,
definitely doesn't work in your favor.
yeah.
During the inspection, we had one person who said to CQC they had to leave their premises. Well, actually, you cannot obstruct them in their duty. That the legislation will lend itself. If you feel threatened or if you feel the inspector's being really obnoxious or whatever, there are things you can do, but you cannot obstruct them, and it will be seen obstructing them in carrying out their duties. So there are things you can do. Things you can't do and shouldn't do is rant, send off. If they've asked you to send an action plan following a visit immediately, you send the action plan, but you say, this is based upon the feedback from CQC. We have not yet had an opportunity to check on the draft report and see whether we agree it's factual, accurate account of the visit. So if you're sending an action plan based on feedback, you're actually almost admitting that there were things wrong. But and then how can you challenge the draft report? Because you've already put an action plan together. So when you provide an action plan based on feedback, what you say to CQC is, this is based upon the feedback, and this may change once we receive the draft report, because then you're allowed to challenge that. And I think that's really quite critical.
I see, right. So there's a bit of a window there. So that draft report can be affected by what you write in that action plan.
Absolutely. So, it's tying it
It's a
all
massive from what I understand, that's a massive opportunity then to
if you're convinced.
change your position, your fate, let's just call it that for the moment, because requires improvement is a pretty as it's not good, and care providers don't like to be requires improvement, quite rightly. So anything, if you feel it's in your power to do some nudges and to put some words in backed up by some dedicated changes, then there is an opportunity to do that.
And it's that relationship you have with your
Mm.
inspector. I always say, and especially with the new regime that's being introduced by CQC, they're talking about much more of an advisory role. Well, the inspections is just a little window. Start doing much more beforehand. Send in CQC your compliment slip. Send in all the discussions that you're having with your clients and residents and your relatives and your staff. Anything that happens really, really good, send it in. But also, where you're taking action against your staff, send that information into CQC, because when they come and say this member of staff has said X, Y, and Z, you can turn up and say, yes, but we've shared that with you. It's going to be sour grapes. So you can't really put that much of emphasis on this person's opinion of what we're doing. It's about working really and getting your GPs involved. If there's any other stakeholders coming into your facilities, get some compliments out of them. Do an email saying thank you very much for positive feedback, and that gives into your inspection. So those are the things that actually support, and that's the well-led component as well. It's the manager who's critical in the way. We got an outstanding in a home that was rated requires improvement, because we were able to turn it around. We got the manager involved, we got the community involved, we had wish lists, so we had taxis taking our residents to farms that they were born in, all sorts of different things. So you bring it all together and it gives a fuller picture. And this particular service was actually in administration, so it shouldn't be outstanding because it's in administration. But because of the work we'd done, it was outstanding. There were outstanding characteristics. Now, moving forward, CQC have said that they're taking away, the Chloes are being retired, and what's happening now is you're going to have quality statements, which again, they will be 34 quality statements per, is it safe, is it responsive, effective, and so on. So the 5 key questions they ask. Now, that's much more easier to do, and you start developing that in almost like this is what we can do, this is how we evidence these characteristics and statements, and this is the folder we can show CQC for that. That gives you an overall governance section. It's almost like your skeleton of running a service and how to evidence the good that you do. And it's about bringing the community into your home, but the home into the community. And I think that's really critical.
Yeah, I see. So let's imagine a scenario then where the draft report comes. You've been proactive, but a draft report comes through. You are heading towards requires improvement. You get requires improvement. What do you do from there?
Right, you start strategically putting it right. So it could be your staff don't understand. So usually it's medication care plans or training and the governance, the audits and stuff. So
Yeah.
you strategically make sure you pull those things together, you highlight it, you dedicate and delegate that task to people. And you can evidence it. The problem you have is CQC are not coming in fast enough, but they have promised now under the new regime, they have promised they will come in and check on requires improvement and inadequate service to make them, if they're providing evidence that they've changed, then they will change that. It's about giving it to your CQC, all the information that you have made the changes. This is the evidence of that change. And now we need you to get back in place. But it's about making sure that you can evidence that. And that means taking your staff on the journey, because you're as good as the weakest member of your staff team. And if you can train the staff and they understand your value base, that you're working, you rolled up your sleeves, leading by example, that works. And also they need to feel the passion that you have for that service. They have to feel the passion of providing that, being valued, understanding that. So bringing staff together, training them, your most vital and resources are your staff, and you fall by them, or you're made or break by that. And it's how you
Yeah, very interesting. And have you come across, or are there situations where it's a hopeless case?
We've got a service, in fact today it's going to be on our LinkedIn. We've just been notified a service that was going to be closed, residents were being taken out, and we've worked really hard in there. We became the nominated individual. CQC today notified the provider that the notice of proposal has been withdrawn because it works. Now, had the provider not worked, there was a stage where the provider was feeling very disheartened. They thought this was it. They couldn't see the woods for trees. The manager coming in didn't do the right thing. So that worked because people need a way out. They need to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And, but if they're not willing to, and it's a lip service or a plaster, we have walked away. We don't want to work with people who don't understand that you have to make the changes. Areas of concerns have been identified. You have to make the changes to improve. If you don't, then really we don't want to work with you.
Yeah, I'm a curious one. Obviously, PR marketing is our area, and reputations of care homes,
Absolutely.
trying to improve them, and not necessarily improve them, but to celebrate and showcase all the wonderful work they are doing. Because as you and I know, there are so many. If you and I walked into most care homes right now, there'd be a dozen wonderful stories that are happening, of examples of care and dedication, etc.
Sure.
The point I was going to make from this is that occasionally I see examples where care providers, if they get a requires improvement or negative CQC report, they will then give a statement to the press stating, why the CQC was wrong, and being on the defensive. Now, I wouldn't want to ever say that there's a blanket no way to do it, but if you are trying to get the CQC on your side, basically, and work in partnership with them, like it or not, then it's better to publicly acknowledge that the CQC has found these things, and you'll take it seriously, and you've got an action plan to improve it.
You are right, Adam. It's really, really important that people recognize if CQC have found something and you have not challenged it, that's a fact. Then to mudsling in public, it doesn't work well, and it makes you look quite awful. In fact, one of the things we say is that, maybe say we are working closely with the regulator and the local authorities to improve and ensure that we meet the standards that are required. And perhaps in some cases where it's really awful, where you've got these exposés, actually acknowledging that we fell far, far short of what our standards are, but we are going to do everything in our power to improve.
Yeah.
I think I think you are right. You cannot be picking a fight with the regulator.
Yeah. And okay, so you've got an action plan. You are dedicated to doing it and you're delegating, as you say, and you want to get everything right. I know some providers who say they have that and yet still take actually quite a long time to improve in reality. So what brings about real improvement in the eyes of the regulator that gets you to that good?
Leadership. I think leadership is critical. And where you've got issues with the leadership, so for example, if you've got a really negative report and your manager's saying, no, we were right, we were absolutely right, you've tried to train your manager, they are not moving at all in the right direction. Well, you have to seriously think about that leadership and perhaps taking action and saying, maybe this is not the fit that we require. And actually, that's not a bad thing. The regulator is quite happy that you are taking action in the right direction. And it's so that leadership is critical. If you've got seniors or you've got a clique or the culture is bad, CQC are looking at the culture now. You have to be proactive and take action. The regulator does not want to run your care home. They want to see you run the care home. And so if it means taking action, getting rid of people, whichever way, that's a proactive move. And that the CQC, the regulator, is looking at the fitness of the provider. You showing lack of leadership calls into question your fitness. And I think so leadership, I think, is critical to the road of recovery from requires improvement to good.
Yeah, very interesting.
And sustainability.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And how long are we looking at in what's the dream case scenario from good to requires improvement to good? I know the delays we're talking about.
The dream scenario we had was 4 months that the service had to improve. They improved. We were able to evidence it. We were bombarding CQC every other day, and it had a huge commercial impact on the service. The financial viability of the service was at stake. CQC recognized that. We worked closely with them. They came back in. They were able to change it. And that was really positive. It's working with the regulator, citing financial viability because it had an impact. Local authorities were nervous about placing people, so on and so forth. That worked like other cases, it could be almost 8-9 months.
Yeah.
But it depends how you work with your regulator.
Yeah. And what about the local politics and the personalities that may come into this? I often hear about, this particular regulator, has got a thing about us, or that kind of, there's a personality or a politics issue coming in. What to do when that raises its head?
Right. You try and distract them, if you like. So you try and build up the rapport relationship. It could be they don't like the owner because he's far too commercial. He's looking at the penny pinching, whatever. So you put the manager who heads it up as a voice. We've been working as mediators often between the regulator and the care provider, and that work. We've become nominated individuals on occasions for that reason. So all of those things, you're trying different things. Having said that, if it still doesn't work, then you could ask for a change in the regulator or write to the local authority and say your quality team member is not working with us, this is not working, can we have a new person, Those are the things you can do. Regulator is loath to do that, but I think that works. And I think but you have to try and get on with it. Your need to work with the regulator and the local authority far outweighs theirs.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find a mutual ground, if you like, and finding the right person who can work with them.
Great, I see. So if everything goes well, you're looking at 4 months, but maybe a whole lot longer. Just want to pick up on the fact that you mentioned that you this example you gave before, when the home was facing financial downhill, that you were like badgering, as it were, the CQC. Tell me about that. How much you should do, how much you shouldn't do. How's a good way to do it, a bad way to do it?
It's that relationship, as I was saying. So the regulators are humans. Form that relate with them. I as a CQC person, I used to know my providers. I used to have relationships. They would send me things all the time. And yes, it was a pain sometimes because you've got the day job and you've got somebody sending you all these good stories, how they're doing, what they're doing. Look, this is a press release on what we're doing. All of those things, it adds up to your risk profile. The regulator holds a risk profile for every single provider. That just, once you start doing it, once they realize, they might just come out to keep you away from them. So, just to shut you up, they might just come up and look at it. But it's about that human relationship. This is care business. It's a people business. We have to have those relationships, and you do bend over backwards when you've got that relationship with somebody. And is that what you need to nurture?
Great. Well, I mean, there's a whole bundle of tips and info and insights here. Bhavna, Is there anything you'd like to say that we've not covered up to now?
No, it is disheartening for people, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I always say, put the resident at the very heart of everything you do, or the patient, and really the regulator cannot argue with it, and put a risk assessment in place for that, and you're laughing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Now, one final question is, if people would like to get in touch and find out a little more about you, how best can they do that?
Well, they can either contact me via LinkedIn, or they can go on our website, which is BKR Care Consultancy website. You have my phone number, my email, and if somebody's really struggling, and we do have people doing that. So if somebody has an unexpected death or something's happened, I've had people ring me middle of the night going, the police are here. What do we do?
Yeah.
It's all those things. We are there and we do support people, but that's how they can contact me.
Great. Bhavna, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.